All right. Good morning. Welcome to another episode of the Liberty Dad Podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. I'm your host, DL, America's most objective libertarian. If you're tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time so early. Remember, folks, this show does not run on freedom fumes alone. So if you're watching me on Rumble, I want you to smash that green dollar sign during the show to drop me a Rumble rant. It's kind of like, I don't know, tossing me a cold one at 7:30 in the morning. You know, it keeps the vibes high and the mics on. And for those that want to go all in, click the subscribe button for just $5 a month because your support helps me fight the good fight. Let us get into this. Some announcements really quickly. This Wednesday through Friday, no show. So spend time with family and friends, okay? All right, no show. Taking off for Thanksgiving. Upcoming events that I've got, or I don't want to say events, make it sound a little bit bigger than it really is, but upcoming things, December 3rd, when we come back next week, next Wednesday, that's when I'm going to start this new series called Human Frequency. I will have a guest host on, Christina Lucas. We're going to talk and try to bridge the gap between politics and culture, that gap between politics and culture and emotional intelligence, lived experience, and relational insight. So look forward to that. That's going to be fun. I'm not going to, this is where I get away from the analyzing everything and we start talking about things from more of a human perspective. And then the following week, December 8th, I will start my Dad Talk Roundtable. That will be on the second Monday of every month at 8 p.m. Basically, I'm getting dads together every month, and we're going to discuss various topics from the perspective of a man, husband, or a father. So I think it's going to be a great conversation, a great way to uplift men's voices. Let's see here. Thanks for the clarification. I thought you were going to have a show on Wednesday. You know, I was considering it, but then I decided against it for a couple of reasons, actually. One, I got to get caught up on the audio version of this podcast. So after I do the stream, I'm supposed to go and convert everything to audio and then get that sent out to Spotify, iTunes, so on and so forth. And I got a little behind. And when you get behind in podcasting and you're streaming every day, or at least on the weekdays, it's kind of, it ends up being, hey, the check's in the mail. But that's not really how you grow your channel. So I've got to put some effort into that. I'm almost caught up. I'm almost caught up with my bills. So I will get that taken care of this week. And then starting off next week, we should be on a fresh foot. So that's the reason for that. The other reason is it is Thanksgiving. Wednesday, we're having some guests over. So I just figured, you know what? I can take a break. You know, it's okay. A little bit of Liberty Dad PTO. I checked. I have some. So that's what's going on. Let's get into today's show. But before we do, I want to show you guys something that I think is really cool. I'm excited about this. I got a compliment. If you didn't see it, I got a compliment from a lawyer, a real live lawyer, on my show. When was that? What day did I have that show? Let me see here. Let me see if I can't find the date of that show. It was with Tyler Yonke, and then let's see. We had that. Oh, come on now. I wish I had the specific date handy, but that's okay. Yes, episode 624, Dad Talk. Tyler Yonke joins to discuss the abusive mom. That's the mom that went viral for beating her child in Alabama. And so on the 21st, so that was basically Friday. Yeah, Friday night. Friday night, Tyler Yonke joined me to discuss that. I asked him to be on the show. Hopefully you saw it, but if not, go back and check it out, episode 624. And it was a great conversation for a couple of reasons. One, I got the perspective of another dad. Number two, he is actually a practicing family law attorney. So he could offer some insight into this, this case. Not a whole lot because he's out of California and the case is in Alabama. He doesn't have all the details, but just in general, he was able to offer some insight from the legal perspective of it. But here's what he said, and I thought it was pretty awesome. I liked it. So let me play this clip for you guys. Hopefully I got it all ready. All right.
First of all, I want to talk about your bill reading stuff. So I've said this about Lee, Brian McClanahan. You know, you don't have to be an attorney to read and comprehend these kind of things. There's so many attorneys out there that, you know, read Supreme Court cases. They don't know what the heck you're talking about. You do a great job. And so, you know, the more you read that, the more you're just like a law student where you've read it and you've understand it more and more. So you do a good job. I just wanted to give you props on that.
I appreciate it.
All right. There it is. How cool is that? You know, because sometimes people will be like, dude, are you an expert? And I'm like, no, I mean, I'm pretty good at reading. I don't know if I'm an expert at reading. I don't know what qualifies to be an expert at reading, but I'm pretty good at it. And he's right. The more you read about something, particularly when or let's put it this way, the more you engage in a particular activity that has specific things about it, whether it's reading law, which are going to have specific terms, they're going to have a specific way that you should understand things. You need to be able to understand that, hey, I might have to go and read other legislation so that I can better understand this one, so on and so forth, right? Or let's just say you want to golf. I don't know why I just picked golf because I do not golf. But let's say that you want to go out and you want to go golfing. It's similar. There are going to be certain things that you do. There are going to be certain terms that you're going to have to understand. There's going to be rules that you're going to have to understand and play within, right? So there's all these, and the more that you do it, the more you learn about it and the better you get at it. Now, you may never be the greatest golfer, but you might be a pretty decent one. And you might be able to evaluate other golfers and say, oh yeah, I understand the mechanism of taking a swing with my golf club. And so then you might be able to recognize when somebody has a good form and when they don't. You know, same thing. You could make the same argument for bodybuilding. You could go in, you're going to go in initially, you may not know anything, and eventually you're going to learn about nutrition. You're going to learn about some of the terms. You're going to learn a lot of things. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. And so what I do is I just review bills. Well, I don't want to just review bills, but that's one of the big things that I like to do. And I don't know why I like to do it. I mean, call me crazy, but so I just thought I would share that with you guys because I was really excited to get that. You know, I don't get a lot of whatever. Let that go. All right, you get it. All right, let's talk about today's bill. So that was cool. Today's bill, HR 6186, no Antisemitism in Education Act. So this bill, first things first, it's only 5 pages. You know that I don't like lengthy bills. Now, is that the best length? Not necessarily, but as we've covered on the show in the past, a lot of that depends on what the bill is actually doing. There are some bills for which 1 page is absolutely appropriate. There are other bills where 10, 15, 20 pages might be necessary. The reason is if you're modifying existing statute, then what a bill will do is it will add in this whole portion of the current statute. And if you're adding to it or you're removing something from it, well, then the additions will generally be in green, and the subtractions, the things that you're removing, they're going to be stricken. They're going to have a line through them. And so then you can kind of read it in context. And so let's say that you have, a 10-page bill, and it's only removing things. That's all it does. So you might have 10 pages of existing statute, and the bill itself is simply saying, this line, no longer applicable. We're removing it. This line, removing it. This line, removing it. And in that particular sense, then a 10-page bill makes sense. And, but if you're adding to it, if you're adding legislation, then I say the length of the bill matters. So it's only 5 pages, which is not too bad. You could read that. Definitely, you could read that over a cup of coffee. And that's what I like, because I want to encourage you to read bills periodically. Maybe not as much as I do, but periodically. The second thing that I actually like about it, it does exactly one thing. It limits federal funds to schools unless they address how they treat discrimination. They want the treatment of discrimination that is motivated by anti-Semitism to be treated the same way as discrimination that is motivated by race. Okay, that's one thing. Okay, fine. So what is, let's talk about the bill. Here we go. All right, so let's see. Let's open this up. Let's see. How do I want to do this? That's what I want. There we go. All right, so this is basically the foundation of the bill right here. I'm quoting from the bill. As a condition of receiving federal funds, any public elementary school, public secondary school, or institution of higher education that receives federal funds shall be required to treat the text there, shall be required to treat discrimination by students or employees and discrimination resulting from the institutional policies of such school or institution that is motivated by anti-Semitism in an identical manner to how such school or institution treats discrimination motivated by race. Okay, so there's a bit of a mouthful there, but they're basically saying, however you treat discrimination that is motivated by race, you need to treat discrimination that is motivated by anti-Semitism as the same. That's basically what they're saying. So right here, right what's on the screen from the bill, that's the basis of the bill. This is what it does. Okay? Now, let's move forward on this. And what's interesting about this bill, another thing that I actually like, is the fact that it defines anti-Semitism internally. So in past episodes, I have been critical of bills that defer to the International Holocaust Remembrance Association? I think it's Association. The IHRA. And they defer to the IHRA's definition. And the problem that I have with that is that in our legal system, I want things defined in law. If they're defined elsewhere where the law doesn't cover, where our legislators have to make arguments and say, this is a good definition, if it's defined elsewhere, then they have no control over it. Yet the public, they may be subject to an ever-changing definition, one that doesn't have nearly the amount of oversight. And so this bill, what it does is it defines anti-Semitism internally. Here's what it says. Yeah, we got it up on the screen. I'm going to move this. I'm going to move this over here. I think that'll be a little bit easier for me. The term, and I hate how I'm looking like in the opposite direction. I need to like change it so it looks like that way. Anyway, the term anti-Semitism means a certain perception of Jews, which may be expressed as hatred toward Jews. Rhetorical and physical manifestations of anti-Semitism are directed towards Jewish or non-Jewish individuals or their property or towards Jewish community institutions and religious facilities. Okay, that's a lot. So, like, what does that mean? Can we get some examples? Well, as it turns out, they do give you some examples. They give you 8 of them. So that's great. So now we understand, what does this mean, a perception of Jews? You know, because at the end of the day, I can have whatever perception of any person that I wish. And we'll get to the point here about this particular legislation that in regards to its use of anti-Semitism, right? Like it's kind of like adding a bit of a rider on a crime. So we'll get to that, okay? Because ultimately they're saying, hey, if there's discrimination, which is already a problem, you know, already something that we codify in law, like what's the motivation for it? So we'll talk about that in just a second. All right, so it goes on. Here's some of the examples. Number 1, calling for, aiding, or justifying the killing or harming of Jews, often in the name of a radical ideology or an extremist view of religion. Okay, I'm comfortable with this. This is a reasonable thing to bring up and say, hey, you know what? If you're calling for, aiding, or justifying the killing or harming of Jews, and you're operating on behalf of the U.S. government, you can't do that. All right? Let's see what else we got. Making mendacious, dehumanizing, demonizing, or stereotypical allegations about Jews as such, or the power of Jews as a collective, especially but not exclusively allegations regarding the myth about a world Jewish conspiracy or of Jews controlling the media, economy, government, or other societal institutions. Okay, so you can't stereotype them. Okay, and again, we're talking about within the confines of government. Discrimination, you can't do that if your motivation is this and it looks like this, right? If your motivation is negative toward Jews, right? It's anti-Semitism, and your anti-Semitism is looking like or if your actions look like this, then it qualifies as anti-Semitism. Sorry, getting tongue-tied there. All right, next up, number 3, accusing Jews as a people of being responsible for real or imagined wrongdoing committed by a Jewish person or group, Israel, or for acts committed by a non-Jewish individual. So basically, this is the blood libel that you hear about. All right, let's move on. Accusing Jews as a people or Israel of inventing or exaggerating the Holocaust. Okay, pretty straightforward. Accusing Jewish citizens of being more loyal to Israel or the alleged priorities of Jews worldwide than to the interest of their country of citizenship. Okay? Demonizing Israel by using the symbols and images associated with classic anti-Semitism to characterize Israel or Israelis, drawing comparisons of contemporary Israeli policy to that of the Nazis, or blaming Israel for all interreligious or political tensions. Okay, that's, basically, we can't go and we can't say, all right, Israel is, acting like the Germans in World War II. That's basically what they're saying. We'll address this a little bit more. We'll just kind of get through it. Number 7, applying a double standard to Israel by requiring behavior of Israel that is not expected or demanded of any other democratic country, or focusing peace or human rights investigations only on Israel. All right? So whatever you do to some other country, if you wouldn't do it to another country, you shouldn't be doing it to Israel. All right, play a little fair. I'm okay with that. And then this last one, number 8, delegitimizing Israel by denying the Jewish people their right to self-determination and denying Israel the right to exist. Now, this one, in my mind, would further need a little bit of clarification. What does it mean by denying Israel the right to, like, if you just said, like, Israel shouldn't exist, okay, well, that's denying them the right to exist verbally, but not in reality. You're not actually doing anything, right? They're still there. Like, I could say it right now, and in 5 minutes, they'll be there. In 10 minutes, they'll be there. An hour, they'll be there, right? So I didn't really actually deny them, not in a physical sense. All right, so let's get back to, like, the bill here. I'm trying to think of where I want to go with this. Okay, so let's be clear. This bill, what it does is it says, if there's discrimination, and the discrimination looks like any of those 8 examples, then you will not receive federal funding. So I don't like that about the bill. I don't like tying federal funding at all to schools. That's a problem. The other thing I don't really like, I would prefer that you just say, if you are in the capacity, you're acting in the capacity of the U.S. government, here are the things that you may not do. Rather than say, well, we have this thing called discrimination, and if the motivation of your discrimination, I think that's getting a little bit too complicated. I think you're just better off saying, look, if you're acting in the official capacity of the U.S. government, you can't do this, period. And then we could debate all those 8 particulars, and we don't really need to get into it. Okay. But there's one thing that I actually do like about the bill. And I was like, wow. So let's go back to that real quick. There we go. This was unique to the bill. Exception. The term anti-Semitism does not include criticism of Israel that is similar to criticism towards any other country. Wait, what? Now, that's rather new. And when I say it's new, because in the past, some of my criticism of bills related to anti-Semitism are explicitly on those grounds and saying, hey, if I said this about Germany, nobody would blink an eye. But if I say this about Israel, all of a sudden people are like, whoa, you're anti-Semitic. And I'm like, whoa, no, 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 no. And like, here's a better way to say it is, if I criticize my own government for this action, there is no way in hell that you're going to stop me from criticizing some other country for that same action, including Israel. So that's the position that I take, is just like whatever I would do to my country, any other country, you can expect the same if I'm talking about you. Plain and simple. So I really like this inclusion. This is a good direction to go if you're going to talk about anti-Semitism in legislation. Now, the biggest problem that I have with this, kind of alluded to it a moment ago, is that it ties federal funds to the to education, which is within the states. Okay, and you might remember that during his campaign for election, Trump vowed to shut down the Department of Education. This bill suggests that we're not shutting down the Department of Education. And I talked about it a couple of episodes ago where I went through and I said, hey, here's what the Secretary of the Department of Education has come out and said. And I played a little video clip where she was talking about, we're going to take some of these activities that the Department of Education is doing currently now, and we're going to disperse them to other departments. Well, when you disperse them to other departments, you are not shutting it down, not in the sense of this is what you're doing, now it's no longer being done. That would be shut down. If you just move things to other departments and then shut down that department, you didn't really shut it down. You just kind of moved things around. That's all you did. You just took like a bunch of cups and you've got a ball and you move it around. You're like, all right, see, it's no longer in this spot. You know that little quick game that you see on the street where someone has like 3 cups and they put a ball or something under one cup and they move them around. They're like, all right, which cup is the ball under? And like they do some sort of sleight of hand at some point, and then you think it's like the third one, and then they lift it up and you're like, oh wow, I got it wrong, because you missed something, right? And that's the same thing here. They would just be shuffling it around, and then they'll go, voila, no Department of Education. And you're like, yeah, but all the responsibilities are still here with the federal government, that was the problem in the first place. That's what we objected to, was the federal government doing these things. Not that the federal government had these things all in one entity. That's entirely different. So, but let's go back and let's hear what Trump himself had to say about this, right? Because we want to make sure that we're representing everything fairly. And if I say during his campaign for election, Trump vowed to shut down the Department of Education, that's a nice claim. I should back that up. So let's back that up. We got 3 clips, 3 quick clips. We want to make sure. We're very sure.
But we were going to do this. I would like to just about end the Department of Education. It's time. The country does very well in some ways, but very badly in others. We did fantastically in everything. We did as good as you can do in education, but you have to get rid of the Department of Education, close it up. When you look at the list of countries, we're always at the bottom. We spend more money per pupil, and we're always at the bottom of a list of 40 countries. And we should close it up and let local areas and, frankly, states handle education. I don't know if that's good politically to say or bad politically to say, but that's the way it's going to be. We're going to close it up.
All right. We're going to close it up, and we're going to let the states and the local communities handle education. Part of education would be handling the things that happen during the course of education. Do you have discrimination? Okay. Well, you need to handle that. It's not really you need to handle this. By the way, if you better do it the way that we want you to, or we won't give you this funding. And so they're currently adding to it. By the way, this bill is by Representative Randy Fine, who my audience knows I am not a fan of at all. But I'll give him some credit on this one. Like, there's some elements of this bill that I actually appreciate. Okay? Let's get to the second clip. These are all Trump clips, okay?
I'll give you an
Is
example.
it every month?
I'll give you mentioned
Every year.
yeah, you mentioned the kids. So we're going to cut the Department of Education, let it be run locally. We have this
You mean end
mess.
the Department of Education?
End
Federal
it,
Department
end
of
it, other
Education?
than to have a little tiny coordination. You know, it would be nice to make sure that everybody's
Small.
teaching English.
Yeah.
Okay, so he says a little bit of coordination. So he's kind of changed it a little bit. And I don't know if these are, I'm not playing these necessarily in the same timeline for which he made these comments. But he's like, just a little bit. You know, we're going to make sure you're teaching English, okay? So some bare minimum. Okay, that's not a good start, but he is saying we're going to shut down the Department of Education. All right, continue on.
You know, let them learn English, okay?
I love this.
But no, we're cutting the Department of Education. I was ready to do it before, and then again, the COVID really, if we didn't throw money at that, you would have had a depression. We would have been in a depression. And when I got out, the stock market was higher than when just before COVID came in.
So that will be the
we're gonna
first.
be doing,
That will be the first
oh,
department.
it's going to
you're
happen.
gonna
That's
cut.
going to happen immediately.
I love it.
Immediately.
We're going to do like Department of Interior. There's so many things you can do.
Okay, so you can go online and you can look. The website for the Department of Education is still there. The Department of Education still exists. It is still doing all the functions that it previously was doing. I don't believe, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, I do not believe that it has even said, here are some things that you were doing, you're done. You're no longer doing these things anymore. What they're doing is they're looking, they're like, all right, well, this particular thing that you're doing, we think it might be better over in this agency or in this department. And this other thing, that can go over to this department over here. And that's what Linda McMahon, I think it's McMahon, she came out and she didn't really specify what things were moving, but she did state that they would be taking things and moving them to different departments. That is not really shutting down the Department of Education, okay? Like, when the American people think, when you ask people, if I were just to go into any random person on the street and I were to say, there's a thing called the Department of Education. You ever heard of it? And they say, yeah, I know about it. And if I said, if we shut it down, what would that look like? Most people, probably almost everyone, would not say, well, I bet that means we're going to take all of its responsibilities and put them somewhere else and then shut it down. Because otherwise, you're not really shutting it down. The whole point of shutting it down is to shut down the operations, the functions, the things that it does. Because you've determined that they're either a problem or that you no longer need them to be done. So it's not really shutting it down. And then we've got this last clip here.
I'm going to take the Department of Education, close it in Washington, let the states run their own education. Very important. Because we spend more money per pupil than any other nation in the world by far, and yet...
Wait a minute. We spend more money per pupil. We're going to shut it down. Now, he's not necessarily specifically saying the problem is the amount of money that we're spending, the federal funding, and we're going to get rid of the federal funding. But that's kind of the vibe that you can walk away with, is like, oh, we're going to shut down the Department of Education because all this money that we're spending isn't giving us the results that we want. So therefore, we need to do something different. We can start with not spending that money. Figure something else out. I know, let's give it to the states. Let's let them figure it out. But if you have legislation that's drafted that says, by the way, if you want federal funds, these federal funds that we're already giving you, then you've got to do this. Well, you're still maintaining control. So you haven't shut anything down. That's the problem that I have. That's the big problem that I have with this bill. You're not shutting it down. You are just giving it more reason to exist. Even if it exists, spread out in different departments. So from my perspective, that's the problem with this bill. And so I would ultimately fail this bill, okay? It's not going to work for me. Number one, because it conflicts with what I want to see. And we can do that as American citizens. We can look at a bill, we can read it, we can say, I don't want you doing this. Now, that's not to say that we think anti-Semitism is a good thing. You could simply just say, hey, these things, if you are a government employee, the federal government could do this. The federal government could say, any any government employee cannot do these things, period. And you could stipulate it. You could say, hey, look, you can't say it on your social media. You can't say it, whatever. Like, we can have that conversation. You could definitely say, we're not allowing you to say or do these particular things while you're on the job working for government, whether that's the federal government all the way down to the local government. Now, personally, I don't know that I would really like the federal government doing that, but I could be swayed either way. Let's put it that way. I could be swayed either way, because I generally like to see the federal government doing the least amount possible, and it is not anywhere close to that. But if it were to say we're exercising control over all government employees and saying these are some things that you can't do or say while you're a representative of the government, not so bad. I'm okay with that, depending on what those things are. So that's what I got. That's my bill review for today. You guys enjoy that? We're going to go to a quick intermission. I've got one more thing that I want to talk to you about, and then after that, we'll do all the comments toward the end of the show, okay? Because when we come back, speaking of comments, I want to tell you about YouTube comments that I got. Yeah, we're going to talk about that. So let's go to intermission real quick. We'll be right back. We'll talk about YouTube comments, and then we'll take some comments, and then we'll go on about our merry way. Let's be right back.
The day I got cited, I was blindsided.
I couldn't believe that I was in America. I left a place where the stuff happens, but not here. Here, this is the land of opportunity.
I didn't do anything wrong.
I just couldn't believe it. I didn't do anything wrong.
You think that you're doing things the right way. You think that you're a law-abiding citizen.
And they said I was under arrest for braiding hair, and they took me to jail.
They seized a little over $100,000 out of my business account here. Took 13 years to get it, and less than 13 seconds, I guess, to take it away.
I remember my attorneys telling me, most people don't win against the government.
Because I know now that we have more than just a chance. I know that we're going to keep our homes.
If we win here at the U.S. Supreme Court, it makes a difference for my girls and for so many other families.
I'm fighting back because I don't want to have a lot of other people have to go through the same thing I'm going through with their property getting seized.
We changed the laws so that everybody else can be treated fairly.
I want the opportunity
to operate my legal business,
to practice my craft,
to meet the needs of my community in an innovative way.
And someone has to stand up.
All right, we're back. Let's talk YouTube comments. At the end of every show, what I like to do is I like to say, hey, come back, help me out with the algorithm, drop a comment in. And on my previous episode, the one about Sam Harris, people did just that. Number 622, Sam Harris, the smart people's idiot. that got me a fair number of comments, at least for the size of this channel currently. I mean, if you look at some of the big boys, the Tim Pools, then I got like peanuts. But for my size, I think I did pretty good. So what I would like to do is read some of them and kind of respond. Just because I actually got more than typical out of, so I was like, so you might remember in the Sam Harris episode, number 622, I was criticizing him over, I felt like he was downplaying some of the violent rhetoric on the left while upplaying it on the right. Said, oh, theirs is much, much worse. And so I criticized him for it. I was like, I think you're just basically playing sides in a sense. So here's one of the comments. First time listener. I'm just going to read these right down the line. I'm not going to put them up on the screen. First time listener. Cool. I made it about 15 minutes in before realizing that this podcast is simply too stupid to waste any more brain cells on. Okay, let's see. Oh, somebody replied to them and said, straight up, it's funny because he characterizes himself as some logical guy and then just word vomits a bunch of illogical BS. Nothing but a no-good cherry picker. Fair enough. Here's what I would say to that. I'm glad that you were able to save yourself some time. If you don't like the show, that's fine. You don't like the show. Okay? If you like the show and you're like, hey, I think there's an opportunity for you to be a little bit better, buddy. Like you had some interesting ideas worth hearing, but man, like you're yelling too much or whatever. Like you got some criticism about my delivery. That's fine. Maybe we can work on something, right? And you can help me get better so that the next time you listen to 15 minutes, you'll feel like you've received something of value. That's ultimately what we want to do here, right? Let's see. Wow, a Dunning-Kruger live stream. Maybe. I mean, isn't that pretty much everybody that's on the internet? If you're on the internet and you have a podcast or you have a live stream or you just post a lot of your opinions about the world, you probably think that you're smarter or have a better handle on it than you actually do. So I'm not denying this, right? I'm just a guy that reads and I give my interpretation. And if you want to be like, dude, you got Dunning-Kruger. Okay, maybe. So what? You don't? Right? Like, think about it this way. Are you a psychologist? Are you a psychiatrist? Then isn't it possible if you're running around diagnosing people with, with psychological concepts, if you're that person, perhaps you have it too by virtue of thinking that you know it well enough that you can diagnose somebody off of watching their podcast. Just saying. Like, okay, we might be in the same boat there, buddy. Look, I'm not mad. I already know. When you put your ideas out there and you do something like what I'm doing, like where you give your opinions, people are just going to be mean-spirited. And so I just kind of brush it off, What's that old song from back in my youth? Brush Your Shoulders Off I think it was by Nelly maybe. Like that's how I roll. Like, okay, you got some criticism. If it's good criticism, then I'll be like, oh, that's a pretty good idea. I might have to consider that. If it's just, dude, you got Dunning-Kruger. Okay. Sorry. There's plenty of other podcasts you can listen to if that's how you feel. Let's see what else we got. What Sam is missing about the left being called, quote, the party of murder, end quote. He dismisses this by saying no left-leaning politician supports political assassination. Of course they wouldn't. That would put themselves in a position of real threat of death. But millions of woke voters who can't be the victim of a political assassination gleefully encouraged more assassination and have been doing it since Mangione. Yes, that's kind of the point. Like, it's obvious that people in positions of power or authority are going to condemn this. They generally do. It may be one-sided. That's its own problem. People on the right, when they see a political assassination or something that they don't like that's attacking their side, they'll condemn it. And they'll say, that's terrible. And they'll wag their finger. But then when it's somebody on the left, they'll make their excuses. They might say, they shouldn't have done that, right? Like the people at the top, the people that are influencing, but they'll also sometimes say, well, they'll kind of like add this caveat to it. Okay. But once we get away from the people of power, it is very one-sided. And I've showed you that in polls in the past. There was the poll by You Vote, or Your Vote. Is it You Vote? YouVote.gov, I think is the website. But they had some polls, and we talked about it. And I showed where people are very one-sided when they say, hey, political violence is a problem. Well, if you're a Republican, then the likelihood is that you'll say political violence against Republicans is a problem. If you're a Democrat, then you're likely to say political violence against Democrats is a problem. And then same thing, if you're a Republican, you're likely to say, well, political violence by Democrats is a problem, but you won't necessarily make that. The larger portion of people don't say that about Republicans. And then on the other team, Democrats, they will say political violence by Democrats is a problem, or I'm sorry, by Republicans is a problem, but they'll say, well, maybe not such a problem by Democrats. So people are playing the same team, and this is the point that I was getting at, and this was my argument, was Sam Harris is not acknowledging this. He's just basically talking about the upper echelon and saying, look, it's not happening up here. They're all on board saying the things that they're supposed to say. Yeah, we know that. That's how it works. You're not saying anything insightful. Let's see, what else? Yeah, Sam was correct that Trump's mouth is a huge problem. I agree. And the followers fit the definition of cult members. There's an argument to be made there. Sam Harris may not be the smartest guy in the world, but unless you've got your head in the sand, you'd see that MAGA is a huge problem, largely stoked by foreign bot farms to sow tension in the U.S. population. I have never said anything against that. Okay, I don't know where you're coming up with this notion, but I have never argued that MAGA isn't a problem. In fact, I'm not MAGA, and I've got plenty of criticism for them. See, this comment right here, this illustrates the team sports. Exactly. Because you assume that because I wasn't beating up on MAGA, therefore I must either be one or be supportive of them. And this is the problem. We cannot have a real conversation if the conversation always starts with, if you don't criticize everybody equally, you must be on the team that opposes the one that you're criticizing. But we have to move out of that paradigm. That is not how we can have a conversation, is by assuming that somebody must support this because, must support team A because they're busy criticizing team B. No, I got plenty of criticism for both teams. I may be focusing on one in the moment. That doesn't mean I necessarily support the other. Perhaps I do, perhaps I don't. That needs to be part of the conversation. Let's see, what else? LOL. People who kill other people for political or ideological reasons are not normal people, full stop. That's fair. I have no problem making that, accepting that. Let's see. What's worse in the event of an assassination? Mockery, laughter, derision, or, let me click on this, or calling for more political violence. Was no symmetry between sides. Calling for more violence in anything that further escalates where encourages it as a unique right-wing project. Why is it always guys like that like to use the word liberty that have the most broken brains? I don't know. I feel like my brain's not really all that broken. I mean, again, I'm addressing one particular person in the moment. Listen, man, I have plenty of disagreements with Sam Harris, but Jesus Christ, watching you try to fumble your way through intellectual thinking. And maybe. I don't claim to be an intellectual, and that's not, this is not my, I'm not falling back on, I'm just a guy that reads if I get something wrong. If I get something wrong, then point it out and say, this is where you're getting it wrong. And I go, oh, wow, that's a good point. Let me adjust my worldview to include that new point. But I say, I'm just a guy that reads because I am not claiming to be intellectual. I'm just claiming like, hey, everybody has the capacity to be smart and engage in things smartly. And maybe sometimes you bolo it, right? You mess it up. And somebody needs to come along and say, yeah, no, not so much on that one. And then you resolve your thinking in that particular area and you move forward, right? That's how we get better. Iron sharpens iron, that kind of a thing. Like, okay. See, there was a response to that. It was definitely hard to listen to. It really does seem like it's the Liberty guys who think they're the logical virtuosos. No, you are assuming that, not me. I'm not coming out and saying I have all of the perfect logic, right? I just defend and I say, look, here's what I've read. Here's what I saw. Here's my interpretation of that. Here's why I'm interpreting it that way. Here's where I think it would be better, or here's why I think it's bad, right? And then we can have this dialogue, and then we can determine whether or not I got it right. I'm always about the idea of somebody saying, DL, you got this wrong. Here's why. And then I'll listen, right? That's how we should engage. Last comment here. I think anyone who would want to waste 73 minutes to find out why Harris is dumb must also be dumb. Dude, if you can make your argument about Harris in, let's say, 10, 15 minutes, you should probably just like you. I mean, if you, okay, I think he made a typo. If you can't make your argument about Harris in, let's say, 10 to 15 minutes, you probably just like listening to yourself way too much. Okay, that's kind of a fair comment, right? It's a little brutal, but that's okay. It's what I signed up for. Let's see here. He said, which is what you have got in common with Sam. Okay, maybe, right? That's fair. Anyway, people, don't waste your time on useless YouTube feuds. Go read a book, watch an art movie, or listen to a nice record. I mean, if you're going to do something other than watch my show, I kind of can't argue with that. Yeah, go read a book. Go watch a good movie. Or listen to a nice record. Somebody's old record. It's okay, I'm cool. I feel you. I listened to my fair share of records. But honestly, that's not bad advice. I mean, look, if you think that some of us out here are talking to hear ourselves, or that we're long-winded or whatever, then yeah, you might be better off just go reading a book or going to watch a movie. Go outside, touch grass. But if you're going to watch a show, then watch mine and then critique me and say, DL, you took 73 minutes to say this. Can't you do it in like 20, 30? Fair. That's fair. And that's what I'm going to do. That's why today's show was a little bit on the shorter side. Maybe not the show in total, but you'll notice that I ended the bill review in like 30 minutes. Done deal. We went through it. Done. Right? And that's what we're going to start doing. So I'm telling you all of this because when I ask you to come back and drop a comment in there, I don't necessarily address all of them for one reason or another, but I do read them. And for right now, since the comments are on the lower side numerically, I can read them all. And so I do read them. And if you've got some criticism in there that I think is meaningful, then yes, I will actually consider it. So thank you. I know some of those were mean-spirited. They were just like, oh, this guy's dumb. He's smarter. He thinks he's smarter than he really is, blah, blah, blah. Whatever, that's fine. Okay. But I do read them, and I appreciate them. And even if they're a little bit tough to hear, dude, you talk too much. Okay, you're right, I do. Let me figure out how to not talk so damn much so that you'll listen again. So that maybe somebody will come back and be like, you know, this is my second time. The first time I didn't like it, but then I saw that instead of a 73-minute show, you had a 43-minute show. So I figured I'd tune in to see what was different. Boom, there we are. All right, let's get to some chat. Let's get to the live chat here real quick, and then we're going to head on out. All right, let's see. All right, let's see here. Let's see what you guys are saying. Yep. I saw that YouTube short with the lawyer praising you. Good stuff. I know, right? And look, I just want to say, because I've got some haters out there that are like, oh, you think you could read the law? I'm like, yeah, because it's words. I can read the law. Whether I fully understand it in all cases is another matter. But this is actually not the first lawyer that's given me a compliment. There's actually another one. Actually, he's here locally. He's given me a compliment. And he doesn't always agree with me. That's when it's the best compliment, right? If it's somebody that agrees with you like all the time, then you're like, I don't know. Maybe you're just being nice. Like because that's who you are. Like you're just a nice guy. You agree with me, whatever, blah, blah, blah. You're just on my team. You're not being critical. But when it's somebody that doesn't always agree with you and they still say, you know what? I appreciate your bill reviews. You do a pretty decent job. Oh, cool. So I got two lawyers, and I just need to get a few more, like 4 or 5 lawyers, and be like, yeah, this guy, you should listen to him. And then I just listen to the people in the comments that say, stop talking so much. Shut up. Let's see what else we got. A golf etiquette is a thing. I wouldn't know. I was just telling somebody yesterday, I was at an event and with some friends or whatever, and we were talking about sports, and I was making the joke that I am not good at any sports. I don't talk about sports. Oh, it was at dinner last night. Yeah, I was at dinner with some friends last night, and we went out to a place, it was like a sports bar type place, and there were just screens everywhere, and they were playing the football game, and I was like, yeah, I don't know anything about football. And they were like, oh, yeah, the first down in the fourth or something. And I was like, yeah, I don't know what that means. And my wife, who is foreign born, she was born and raised in Indonesia, came here for college. She knows more about how football operates than I do. Now, maybe you might have to take away a little bit of my American creds for that, but it is what it is. Let's see what else we got in here. Let's see. You mean Trump lied about abolishing the Department of Education? Say it isn't so. I wish I could say it wasn't so, but it is so. Oh, man. Politicians not following through on campaign promises. News at 11, right? Let's see what else. Of course, it's Randy not so fine. I know. There's that meme that's like, when somebody that you dislike makes a good point. That would be a perfect meme right now. Because, I don't like Randy Fine. But I got to give him credit. Of bills that I reject, this isn't too bad. Particularly given the circumstances. Because, again, it does things that other bills regarding anti-Semitism don't do that I've criticized them explicitly for. And if Randy Fine's going to kind of lead the way in saying, well, maybe this ought to be part of what we include in these bills, I'm okay with it. That's it. I like the direction, even if I ultimately say I don't like this bill. And that's what it means to be the most objective libertarian. You have to be willing to say, I don't like this guy. He makes me bristle, but he's got a good point here. Or he did this good thing. So that's what we do. Let's see what else. Let's see what else we got here. There it is, Joe. You've nailed it. The key is to skip the first 15 minutes. He's got it. You got to figure it out. You skip the first 15 minutes, and bam, everything that I've said, or maybe skip the first 30 minutes. I tell you what, for any episode, going back before today's episode, so anything that is, let's see, what's the number? What's our number? 625? Yeah. So anything from 624 before, just watch the last 30 minutes because I'll probably say everything I said in the first 30 minutes. It's a nasty habit. I'll break it. Don't worry. Let's see what else we got here. I mean, I love the defense of me here. Most of these jackasses couldn't even have a podcast if they tried. They probably have the attention span of 5 minutes. So the most they're going to listen to is maybe a 20-minute podcast at most. But that's fair. I appreciate you stepping up to defend your guy. Okay? That's cool. But, it is what it is. People are going to be critical of you. I've had meaner comments slung toward me. So, whatever. Loving the creative thumbnail that DL's been doing. Thank you so much. Working, we're always working to improve this show. So, if you're critical of me, make it meaningful. Don't waste your time. Don't get on there and just be like, dude, you got Dunning-Kruger. Okay, I don't know what I'm going to do about it. You think I'm just going to stop podcasting? No, I'm not going to do that. Probably because I have Dunning-Kruger. But maybe you could say, all right, bro, you've got Dunning-Kruger, but let's see if we can dial it back and help make you a little bit better on the Dunning-Kruger, right? I might be willing to listen to that. And then you will have made the world a better place. So there's that. Don't listen to DL. Do not skip 30 minutes. We need the watch hours. Okay. That's fair. All right, folks. That is my show for today. I hope you found it informative and inspiring, whether you're watching live right now or whether you've come back and you're watching this later. Please drop me a comment sometime in the future with your thoughts. Think about it a little bit. Let it swirl around in your brain. Come back and say, hey, DL, here's something that I didn't think of when I was listening to you the first time, or, maybe if you're watching for the first time, something that you thought of. Drop me a comment. I do read them, as you just saw. Okay? Let me know. Did I miss something? Do I need to offer a correction? Maybe you want to be promiscuous with praise. Maybe you just want to say, DL, you're too talkative. You chat too much. Shut up. Like whatever. I'll take it. I'm here for the arrows for you people. Okay? I'm all ears. But with all that being said, I'm out. I will see you guys tomorrow with another episode. You know that I'm all about supporting organizations that hold my values. Make sure you head on over to blackgunsmatter.shop. They've got apparel, stickers, and more. Use the code LibertyDad, all one word, at checkout to score a 10% discount. Or just hit the referral link in the show notes. That'll make it so much easier. Remember, I'm not just a voice on a mic. I'm a dad who's working hard to deliver to you the best libertarian content. Connect with me on Linktree, where you'll find links to my Patreon and buy me a coffee, because every bit helps keep this show rolling. Plus, you can find me on my other platforms to stay in the loop. With your help, this show, The Message of Liberty, will be seen and heard by more people. As always, I appreciate you tuning in and look forward to seeing you in the next episode.